Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fels. So one of the main issues we have found in this inquiry is ASIC is loath to use criminal sanctions or to try and achieve criminal prosecutions. Is your view that they are too happy or it's too easy for them to go down the civil route?
Yes, it's very tempting. Civil route is a lot easier. I'm working off ACCC, I'm sure this applies to ASIC. If it is civil, first of all, you don't have to go through the Director of Public Prosecutions. You do the prosecution yourself, and the burden of proof is quite low. It's basically balance of probabilities, not proof beyond reasonable doubt. Also, corporations don't fight that hard over civil penalties because they're just fines, which are the cost of doing business. Whereas if there is a criminal case, very often massive resources will go into the defence and they'll fight at every stage of the process. But the fact is, Parliament has made a lot of offences criminal, and the law enforcers should follow that through in cases. If they happen to lose, we can go back to Parliament and ask for some help. Something like that, by the way, is happening at the moment with the ACCC, right or wrong. They've lost a few merger cases, and they've said to Parliament, well, actually, we need a little bit of help with the law. Now, I just use that as an illustration of the fact that if you run a criminal case or two and lose, you can go back to Parliament and say, we've got problems, and can you help us? That's a better approach to try and to lose than not to try at all.
Yeah, well, the position that they take is not to try, which is a major problem. In terms of going back into time, we had former Senator O'Chee give evidence today, who was around doing inquiries into these matters 30 years ago. So I guess the reason that ASIC was given jurisdiction here in relation to financial services rather than the ACCC was not really clear to me. Is there a particular reason that this was carved out from the ACCC's mandate back then?
Yeah, lobbying by the financial services industry. That explains it all. And it got it through the Treasury. The Treasury is pretty good standing up to interest groups, with the exception of the financial services industry, which it's always been a bit soft on. And that's essentially what happened. I've got a couple of other points to make on that. The Wallace inquiry of 98 were very concerned and unimpressed with ASIC, and they came and spoke to us at the ACCC. Now, they said, we're sounding you out on the whole idea, handing it all over to you, financial services regulation. Now, we linked because there are two bits to that. One is just sort of apply, law enforcement. We're happy to do that, but we're not terribly keen to get stuck with having to do licensing and disclosure and a whole lot of administrative things. We preferred to stick to law enforcement. So we said to the Wallace inquiry, well, okay, but the law enforcement bit, we don't want to be buried in administrative work. So they produced a report, and if you read the fine text, or more than that, the report basically says hand over financial services, certainly law enforcement, to the ACCC and make the jurisdiction concurrent so that one or other will take the action and they work out an MOU. Now, this change in this view of this could have been slightly more clearly expressed. It was in the report, and I actually called Wallace, who I knew. I said, could you make it clear? So the following Sunday, actually, on Business Sunday. He made it really clear, handed over to the ACCC. We did talk with Treasury, and actually I have to report those officials later became involved in at high levels of banks. And they said, you shouldn't have two people enforcing the same law. Now, there are hundreds of precedents for that, particularly in areas where there are overlaps and so on. But they dug in on that point, and then they fought off the idea of the ACCC having the full enforcement power, and that has weakened financial services regulation.
So one of the ideas that's been put forward is that the AFP could take on the role of investigation and you treat this white-collar crime like any other crime. That might well be good. I just hesitate to jump in and fully endorse it without having some idea of the AFP having the expertise and all that sort of thing, but it might well make some sense to give them white-collar crime. There's also another little complication, and that is the overlap of civil and criminal. It is complicated, but it's probably better to have it in one organisation. That's a good point. Now, in relation to investigative methods that I expect that the ACCC and ASIC would do when they're looking at corporate crime, ASIC has said to this committee that they don't want to provide documents which show how they go about their investigations because they have a fear that it would expose some sort of secret internally about how they go about their business. Now, I'm just trying to understand whether you have any insight as to what might be so secret.
I'm completely sceptical of that point of view, and quite a few ex-ASIC people actually work on the other side at the moment. And also the fact that you investigate in a particular way, it becomes obvious at the end, particularly if it goes to court, what's being done. And there's only a tiny fraction of methodology that, you may want to keep secret, like the identification of maybe some people who gave you information. But in general, no, the methodology should be exposed, and it'd be quite good if we could look at it and point out strengths and weaknesses, particularly weaknesses in their enforcement methodology.
Okay. I want to ask you about whistleblowers.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a big focus for our report because we've encountered whistleblowers throughout our inquiry where I think people have risked a lot and have really been treated poorly. Do you have any thoughts about how we could better protect whistleblowers and how that could help with law enforcement?
Well, you've certainly identified an important problem, and the flavour of your critique I accept. Personally, I've always been an advocate for rewards for whistleblowers, and it is practiced in quite a lot in America, certainly in the field I know about antitrust. It's pretty common to do it. And whistleblowers tend to come out very poorly, and there's probably more could be done to protect them. I can't be very specific, but my sense is more could be done to protect them. But in the end, the incentives for whistleblowing in economic terms are very poor. You don't come out ahead being whistleblower. You get some satisfaction in illegality being, you help to uncover it.
Okay, thank you very much. Deputy